Hello and welcome to today's Saturday session. Today's lesson will be focused on physical activity, participation and benefits. So the learning outcomes today from topic 5 are to discuss the personal, social and economic benefits of physical activity for health and well-being at different life stages, and also to explain different concepts of physical activity. Hello and welcome to today's Saturday session. Today's lesson will be focused on physical activity, participation and benefits. So our learning outcomes today from topic 5 will be to discuss the personal, social and economic benefits of physical activity for health and well-being at different stages of life, and also to explain the different concepts of physical activity. So our first learning outcome that we're going to address today is to discuss the personal, social and economic benefits of physical activity for health and well-being at different life stages. And discuss means to offer a considered, balanced review that includes a range of different arguments or factors, and all of the opinions, conclusions or points made must be supported with appropriate evidence. So before we look at the benefits of physical activity for different life stages, we need to define and explain a few key terms. So physical activity first is any bodily movement that's produced by the muscles of the body that result in the person expending energy. So if you take your pen or your pencil or your book that you have in front of you, or your phone or your device if you're watching this on, and you lift it up, that is physical activity, as it is a bodily movement. It is produced by the muscles of the body, so it'll be the muscles of your hand and your arm in this case, that result in energy expenditure. So it'll be a small amount of energy expenditure. Health enhancing physical activity then, on the other hand, includes specific movements and activities that result in a health benefit of the body that are of concern. So if you take the example that we used a minute ago, so the pen that we picked up, this would not fall into the category of health enhancing physical activity, as health enhancing physical activity needs to be a specific movement and activity that result in a health benefit. So in terms of intensity, so picking up a pen won't result in a high enough intensity to result in a health benefit, and we'll discuss that more later on in the lesson. Sedentary then refers to not being active or not moving. So if we were to just sit and not move all day, then we would be sedentary. So aiming to be as physically active as possible and trying to limit how sedentary we are is very important. So the next key term we're going to look at is intensity. So intensity is a subjective measure. Subjective relates to how you feel yourself, of how hard physical activity feels to you when you are performing it. So your perceived exertion, so how you perceive or how you feel the exertion is. So how hard you perceive it or you feel it to be. Intensity is determined in a number of different ways. So it can be determined by percentage of your maximum heart rate. It can be determined by rate of perceived exertion. It can be perceived by the talk test, can be perceived by breathing, and can also be perceived by sweat levels. So all of this information is important and underpins the benefits of physical activity. Moderate to vigorous physical activity is a term used when discussing physical activity for health. And the acronym for it is MPVA, which you'll see later on. So if we take the moderate part of moderate to vigorous physical activity, moderate physical activity refers to activities that are at 50 to 70% of our maximum heart rate, are at 5.5 to 7 out of 10 in terms of level of difficulty. That's referring to rate of perceived exertion, or RPE. Moderate physical activity causes breathing to increase, but not so that the person is out of breath. So breathing will increase slightly. If you are engaging in moderate physical activity, you'll be able to talk, but you wouldn't be able to sing. So your breathing rate would allow you to talk, but not sing. And moderate physical activity causes sweat to develop after about 10 minutes of engaging in it. So if we look here at our moderate physical activity, so we can see all the different intensity measures in the previous slide are used to determine whether we're at moderate physical activity. So we can see we have heart rate, level of difficulty or RPE, we have our breathing, or we have our talk test, and we have sweating. So there are 5 intensity measures or gauges. Vigorous physical activity, which is a more intense form of physical activity, refers to activities that are at 70 to 85% of our maximum heart rate. So we're up to greater than 7 out of 10 in terms of our RPE, so our rate of perceived exertion or rate of how hard we feel we are exercising or being active. Vigorous physical activity causes breathing to become deep and rapid. When we are engaging in vigorous physical activity, we won't be able to say more than a couple of words. And vigorous physical activity causes sweat to develop after only a couple of minutes. So it'll be less than 10 minutes before vigorous physical activity causes us to sweat. Examples of the different types of physical activity. So moderate physical activity would refer to a brisk walk or cycling at a leisurely or moderate pace. Vigorous physical activity would refer to jogging or running, depending on our fitness level. Bicycling uphill would be another example of something that could result in vigorous physical activity. And aerobic dance as well is sometimes used to engage in vigorous physical activity. So looking at the different intensity measures just in a small bit more detail. So if we look at percentage of maximum heart rate used to determine intensity. So percentage of maximum heart rate can be used as a measure of intensity for our physical activity. So what is our maximum heart rate? The formula that is often used for maximum heart rate is 220 minus our age. So the task that I'm going to set to you now is to calculate the maximum heart rate for a 20-year-old person using the above formula. So I'm going to give you 20 seconds to do so. Okay. So here we have the calculation for maximum heart rate for a 20-year-old person. So we have 220 minus the age, which is 20, which is equal to 200 beats per minute. So when we're talking about heart rate, it's often measured in beats per minute. So our next task is to calculate the heart rate zone or range from 50 to 70% of maximum heart rate for a 20-year-old person. So this time we're using percentages. So we multiply our maximum heart rate that we got in the previous slide, which is 200. And we multiply that by 50% and it is equal to 100. So it'll be at 100 beats per minute will be 50% of our maximum heart rate. So half of our maximum heart rate. So 70% of our maximum heart rate would be our maximum heart rate is 200 by 70%. So if we could do that on a calculator, you can multiply it by 70%, or you could multiply it by 0.7, and that would give you 140 beats per minute. So the heart rate zone or range from 50 to 70% of maximum heart rate for a 20-year-old person would be 100 to 140 beats per minute. And that would correspond to moderate physical activity. Next is our rate of perceived exertions, or RPE. So this is a scale developed from 1 to 10 that is used to determine how difficult we perceive or we feel activity or exercise is. So again, this is another measure of intensity for physical activity, and during or after activity, a person rates how hard they felt the exercise was on a scale from 1 to 10. So we can see here, so from 5.5 to 7 would be moderate level of physical activity. Everything below that would be moderate, down to the way down to rest. And then above 7 on the RPE scale would be determined as vigorous physical activity. So if we look at the other determinants of intensity for physical activity, we have talking, we have sweating, and we have breathing. So for moderate physical activity, with regards to talking, we're able to talk but not sing. For vigorous physical activity, we can't say more than a few words. And to recap on sweating, so when we're engaging in moderate physical activity, we'll start sweating after about 10 minutes. And when we're engaging in vigorous physical activity, sweat will develop in a shorter time period than 10 minutes. And if we look at our breathing, so when we are engaging in moderate physical activity, our breathing increases, but we're not completely out of breath. And when we're engaging in vigorous physical activity, our breathing is very deep, very rapid, so very fast. And then just a summary slide detailing all of our intensity measures for physical activity. So we have our talking, our sweating, our breathing, our heart rate, and our RPE. So these would be used as our determinants to show that we are engaging in moderate physical activity or vigorous physical activity. So if you were asked in an examination, how would we know if we're engaging in moderate physical activity? We could give some of the determinants here. So we could be saying that we can talk, but we're not able to sing. On the talk test, our breathing rate increases, but we're not out of breath, and we're at 5.5 to 7 out of 10 intensity in terms of RPE. So here's our summary slide on the indicators of physical activity, the intensity of how hard we're working when we're physically active. So if we are asked in examination as to what would indicate that we are at a moderate level of physical activity, we could say that we are able to talk but not sing, that we are at 50 to 70% of maximum heart rate, or that our breathing rate increases but we're not out of breath. So we have these indicators that we can use. So the physical activity guidelines is another area that we may be asked in an examination. So for children and adolescents aged 5 to 17, these are the guidelines that are very important to be aware of. So children and adolescents should engage in 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day. So again, the moderate to vigorous physical activity that we've been speaking about previously, 60 minutes of it every day. And this should include muscle strengthening, flexibility, and bone strengthening exercises 3 times a week. So again, it doesn't have to look like really structured resistance training sessions. This could be as simple as including them in a warm-up, maybe doing press-ups or squats or lunges or some type of exercise that is muscle strengthening, is improving our mobility and our flexibility, and is strengthening our bone against resistance. We want to be doing that 3 times a week, as well as the 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day. Children and adolescents in this age range should also limit the amount of time spent sedentary and particularly the amount of time recreationally spent in front of a screen. And for adults, they should be performing at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic physical activity each week, or at least 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity. So as we can see here, we would only need to do half as much vigorous physical activity as we would moderate. So we could have a mix of both. So if we were to do 50 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic physical activity, that would be equivalent to 100 moderate intensity physical activity minutes. So if we were to have a mix of both, we could do 50 minutes of vigorous intensity physical activity, and we could do 50 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity to meet the minimum guidelines. Adults should also do muscle strengthening activities at a moderate or greater intensity that involve all the major muscle groups on 2 or more days per week, as these will provide additional health benefits. So when we're looking at the guidelines, meeting the minimum amount of moderate to vigorous physical activity minutes helps us to extend the duration of our life, so how long we're living for. But then the muscle strengthening activities helps us to maintain a high quality of life as we age, so ensures that we're able to function in our daily activities and tasks, and also ensures that we reduce the risk of falls. So again, full body resistance training exercises, again, doesn't have to be too complicated or too strenuous. Again, just ensuring that we're performing full body exercises targeting all major muscle groups at least twice a week, and that we're at a moderate or greater intensity. It's important to note that adults can and also should do more activity than the above for additional health benefits. So again, getting towards that 300 minutes of moderate physical activity or 150 minutes of vigorous physical activity, or a combination of both, is recommended to get even more health benefits. And again, having longer resistance training or muscle strengthening activities or sessions during the week, or more than 2 sessions per week, may also provide additional health benefits. And adults should also limit the amount of time spent being sedentary. For older adults, so for adults over the age of 64, they will have the same guidelines as adults that we've discussed on the previous 2 slides, but they should also take part in training focused on balance and strength to reduce the risk of falls and maintain function. So again, it's our resistance training, but with an additional focus on balance and strength, just to reduce the risk of falls and improve and maintain function, which means that you're just able to perform daily tasks. So again, for example, carrying the shopping. Again, if you were doing a resistance training session, if you were carrying a dumbbell to prepare you for carrying the shopping, walking up the stairs, if you were performing lunges, that would prepare you for walking up the stairs. And again, ensuring that you had a strong enough upper body to prevent yourself from falling. You could be doing press-ups or incline press-ups, just to ensure that your upper body is strong enough to support your body weight if you were to fall. So it's about maintaining as high a quality of life as we can when we're talking about muscle strengthening as we age. More information on the physical activity guidelines for different age groups, so younger than 5 years of age, or people with different conditions or different circumstances, can be found by using the QR code here. So if you scan this QR code, it'll provide you with more information. So with our background information all finished, we're going to move on to the learning outcome that we addressed at the start of the lesson, which is the personal benefits of physical activity. So this is the benefits of physical activity for an individual person themselves. So in an examination, you may be asked for a particular age group and the benefits of physical activity for that person in that age group. A lot of the benefits of physical activity will be universal across the different age groups that you're provided with, but it's no harm in knowing a few of the ones that are maybe individual to a particular group. So our learning outcome that we talked about earlier was that we were to discuss the benefits of physical activity. So when we're discussing, we have to provide evidence for the opinions or the conclusions that we draw. So again, here we have healthy habits that we develop in our childhood may continue into our adulthood. And the evidence for this is that the development of fundamental movement skills or fine motor skills and self-efficacy can provide us with healthy habits that when we develop them, that they continue into adulthood. So if we have better fundamental movement skills and higher levels of self-efficacy or confidence in our own ability, we're more likely to continue to be physically active into adulthood. Our second benefit then is to help protect against the risk of developing chronic diseases. Okay, and our evidence then is our different diseases, so our coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, and different types of cancer. And again, it's universal across childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and senior citizens as well. Another benefit is to be able to maintain a healthy body weight or body composition and this will prevent the onset of obesity. So our points that we're trying to make, or our factor, is that we're preventing the onset of obesity. And then if we look at our discussion, so we're looking at our evidence of how we're doing this, we are preventing obesity by maintaining a healthy body composition or body weight. And again, universal across all of the age groups. So again, when we're looking at our discussion, we're looking at our factors. When we're looking to discuss the factors and also the evidence as to why those factors are true. What we're backing up our conclusions with evidence. So again, our conclusion is that a benefit of physical activity is our improved efficiency of the body systems, and our evidence is our increased lung capacity. Our conclusion is that we have increased energy, and our evidence is through increased mitochondrial turnover. So when we exercise, we increase our mitochondrial turnover, the amount of mitochondria in our body, which would provide us with more energy in the long term. So our conclusion is that physical activity can have a positive impact on mental health. And the way it does this, so our evidence for this is through the release of serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone. Another benefit of physical activity, conclusion that we're drawing, is that we have improved academic performance. And the evidence for this is that physical activity enhances our cognitive function, which is important for academic performance. And also, another conclusion that we can draw is that physical activity can reduce stress and anxiety and combat depression. And the way it does this, the evidence we have for this, is it does it through the release of endorphins and serotonin. So again, all of these benefits of physical activity are universal across childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and in senior age groups. So we move on to the social benefits of physical activity. So again, we're looking at our discuss action verb. So we're drawing the conclusion that we're developing cooperation and teamwork skills. We're doing that through interaction. So interaction is our evidence that we are developing our cooperation and teamwork skills. Again, we're provided with opportunities to make friends in clubs. Our conclusion is that physical activity provides an opportunity to be socially active and supported, again through interaction and through clubs. Physical activity helps improve our self-esteem and our self-efficacy. Our conclusion is that physical activity may encourage family and friends to become more active, and the evidence for this is if they see the benefits. And again, our conclusion is that physical activity can reduce the risk of falls, fractures, or injuries, and the evidence for this is that this happens by the strengthening of the bones and muscles. And again, all of these social benefits are universal to all the different age groups. So now we're on to the economic benefits of physical activity. So economically, there's a significant reduction in healthcare costs. So €0.4 billion reduction in healthcare costs in 2019 due to sport and physical activity. So the more active people are, the less likely they are to get sick, the less drain there is economically on the healthcare system. Sports-related taxes on all sports-related goods and services bought. There's taxes on all of them, which will provide revenue for the government. More people cycling and walking to work, lower transport costs, and also lower emissions. It's an opportunity for businesses to make money through sponsorship, advertisements, and marketing, etc. So, for example, SuperValu sponsoring the GAA is an example of a business making money or making money through sponsorship and advertising and marketing, and using a physical activity and sporting platform to do so in the Gaelic Athletic Association. So the value of sport in Ireland. So Sport Ireland published a report in 2021 showing the value of sport in Ireland, and had a few different metrics that they used to determine the value of sport in Ireland. So they have consumer expenditure, so 3.3 billion spent by people in Ireland on sports related goods and services in 2018 when this study was conducted. Gross value added, so 3.7 billion euro added to the Irish economy through the participation in sport and physical activity. 64,080 jobs were used in 2018, so 2.8% of the population's jobs were to do with physical activity and sport. And then there's the economic value of volunteering as well for sport. So had a 1.5 billion euro value of the use of volunteering in sport. So again, I think an example of this, I think if your local club or your local GA club, or think of fundraising in order for the club to raise money to spend on goods and services. So imagine your local team need to bring one of their youth teams on a bus somewhere. That's putting money into the economy, and it's through volunteers, through fundraising. So our next learning outcome is to explain the different concepts of physical activity. So explain means giving as much detail as we can, including reasons or causes. So our first physical activity concept is play. And play is an important type of physical activity focused on people, who are usually children, enjoying moving and also having fun. Play enables the development of fundamental movement skills, so our hopping, our skipping, our jumping, our running, our throwing, our catching, our striking with an implement skills. It also encourages problem solving, as playing different games or engaging in different activities can pose problems that have to be solved, can encourage creativity in how those problems are solved, and can also encourage social skills if done in groups. So examples of play include schoolyard games. So the typical one in a primary school playground is hopscotch. So kick arounds with friends. So again, children together in a field or on the street playing football is an example of play. Pick up basketball. So people just informally playing against each other in basketball is another example. And something as simple as climbing trees. But again, it's not limited to a certain number of activities, and play is multifactorial, and play can be any number of activities. Our next physical activity concept is leisure and recreation. So leisure and recreation activities are those that are carried out in people's free time. They choose to do so, and they focus on participation and enjoyment. So this is when people have free time. So again, when they're not working, so maybe it might be in the evening, when they have the time to do so. It's informal in nature, so it's not typically very formal or very planned. It's informal, and it can have very positive effects on a person's health and well-being. So it can be as simple as going for a walk. It can be something a bit more structured, such as horse riding. It could be going for a swim, and it could be cycling. So again, it's usually individual or in a small group, but it's for the purpose of participation and enjoyment, and can be used to meet the physical activity guidelines as well that we discussed earlier in the lesson. The next physical activity concept that we're going to discuss is physical education. So physical education is a subject at primary, secondary and third level education, and it's taught by qualified professional teacher. So in primary school, it's not a specialized subject, so the subject isn't taught by subject specialists. So primary school teachers teach PE, but they also teach a range of other subjects. And in secondary school, physical education teachers are specialists in their subjects, and they may have maybe one or two or a couple of other subjects, but their specialism is in physical education as opposed to a broad range of subjects. The goal of physical education is to enable every young person to live a sustained, physically active life, so have lifelong physical activity. And the way that they're trying to do this, the way that physical educators are trying to do this, is to develop the knowledge, so what they need to know, the awareness, so the things they need to be aware of, the confidence or competence or self-efficacy in their own ability to be physically active, the attitudes towards physical activity that need to be promoted or maybe need to be addressed, the skills, so again, fundamental movement skills are a vital new part of the PE curriculum for junior cycle that's coming in September 2023. The motivations that drive people to be physically active, and the different abilities that allow people to be active in a way that they can choose. So again, there's a lot of flexibility in the way that people choose to live a sustained physically active life, but it's about promoting and encouraging that. That's what the goal of physical education is. In Ireland, physical education is compulsory at junior cycle, and since 2020 it needs to be offered to all students at senior cycle. So you'll know from watching this video, and because you're watching this video, that it's also offered as a leaving certificate subject and is now an examinal subject. And the guidelines are that all children should receive at least 1 hour of physical education per week. The next physical activity concept we're going to look at is sport. Now, sport is a physical activity that involves physical exertion, so exertion or effort, and skill, where individuals or teams compete against each other for entertainment. So again, the key words here are competition, so competing, and entertainment. So there may be a range of different reasons why someone engages in sport. Some people play because they enjoy taking part or participation, so intrinsic motivation. They enjoy internally themselves participating in physical activity. Other people compete to win, and they are motivated by external rewards such as maybe winning a tournament or winning a trophy, or at a professional level, say for example professional rugby, they may be motivated by winning a trophy or by another extrinsic motivation, which is being paid. So again, in professional sports, athletes are sometimes or often paid to participate. At an amateur level, extrinsic motivation may be to win a trophy, and intrinsic motivation is just to do it for the love of doing it. The next physical activity concept we're going to discuss is outdoor and adventure activities. So outdoor activities are sports and activities that usually take place outdoors or in the countryside. So again, fairly simple. And then adventure activities are sports and activities that involve exceptional excitement or higher level of risk. Now, this may be perceived or actual. So again, there may be a very high level of risk. So if we look at mountain climbing without a harness, that could be a very, very high level of risk. But again, a person may perceive orienteering to be a very high level of risk, whereas another person may not. So again, there's perceived and actual levels of risk with adventure activities. Again, this question came up in the 2023 higher level Leaving Cert paper. So it highlights the importance of knowing all these physical activity concepts. And we were asked to name 4 different outdoor adventure activities. So again, examples here include kayaking, outdoor and adventure. In kayaking, mountain biking, surfing, hiking, mountain climbing, as we talked to previously, and orienteering, which is a part of the physical education curriculum, is another example of outdoor and adventure activities. Mass participation is another physical activity concept, and a mass participation event includes people training themselves or in small groups and then entering a mass event. High levels of people participate in these. So an example of this is the Dublin Marathon or the Boston Marathon, triathlons. But there's loads of different examples all around the country, all around Ireland, all the time. So there's different 5Ks, there's park runs. So there's loads of mass participation events, varying in size around the country and around the world. People can take part to compete, so it can be competitive. You can have professional athletes taking part in different events. They can take part just for personal challenge, so again, your intrinsic motivation, so your internal motivation, doing it for the love of it or doing it for a personal challenge to challenge yourself. And they can also do it to raise money for charities. They're just some of the reasons why people would participate in a mass participation event. And that is the end of our lesson on physical activity, participation and benefits today. I hope it was helpful. Thanks very much for listening, and best of luck with your studies.